7:49 p.m. and it's on a Thursday, November 21st. Now, they're gonna fuck with my phone, so I'm not recording with that. They've done it several times. So what I wanted to do was go over my targeting experience, and from what I've come to realize is that my situation and the symptoms that I've had ever since my targeting has increased as it is today. I started looking back in my past, and I realized that a lot of the symptoms that I've had are related to back when I was younger. Now, back when I was younger, I wasn't as smart as I was, or should I say as I am now. Back then, I wasn't too wise to a lot of things that were going on. In fact, how normal the kids would act, I just really didn't care. It was either all about the video games, going around playing around with friends or whatever, or just the random stuff for your everyday Saturday cartoons or whatever, right? So my mind was wandering a lot on those aspects of life so far, and as the years started to go by, after everything that has happened so far, and I'm looking back from today, I seem to realize that a lot of the stuff that happened in my life and some of the stuff that I witnessed happening to my mother before, back when she was still amongst the living, God rest her, please let her rest in peace. But what I realized is a lot of the stuff that happened seems systematically similar to targeting situations, and I'm starting to suspect that my mother's death may have been orchestrated by this organization, and that a lot of the things that happened when I was younger was just her protecting me from this organization. And as far as I can tell, it was mainly that. But eventually, this is basically going to be part 2 of my targeting experience, and this is going a bit back into my past. Now, I was able to get part 1 up there, and now that's just for current time, but this part 2 is going to be going a little bit back into my past and to the present, and then part 3 is going to be the continuation of part 1. So, if I had to begin with everything, I had to say that I can't recall very much of what was going on. It was me, my mom, my brother, and my sister. And me, my mom, my brother, and my sister. And what I remember, as far back as I can remember, is that we were moving from across town. We caught a train, a metro train, and we were going down the neighborhoods and whatnot, and we stopped at some point. Now, I'm not going to give details about where this was at or when it would happen, because with this type of technology, they prey upon memories, they prey upon social media interests, stuff that you watch and whatnot, and they use a lot of these things for V2K, both to sensitize you in many different factors, which a lot of people don't realize. But not everybody who's being gang stalked goes through this, so I get it, you may not understand it, but I'm doing my hardest to at least get everybody who are all going through this aware, so that they be able to protect themselves from this demonic organization. And I'm telling you, from what I've witnessed, the behavior, the interest and stuff is very, very satanic. And if you read the Bible, you'll see that if you find the exact chapters, they're all throughout the Bible. They're hard to find, but if you can find them, I'm telling you, they actually talk about this stuff in the Bible, about how this all goes against, about every little thing that they do goes against all the 10 commandments of God. It's just mind-boggling, and I started to think, something that's been around for centuries like that has not ceased to stop. And then you're seeing that these texts from way back when are being brought to today, to this current year, to this current day, and this current point in time, that's still around. And you're seeing people act out like this, and they're saying that the end of days comes around when things go as bad as they are depicted in the Bible, as they said. So I'm seeing that, and I'm like, I'm hearing that some dude in who was actually in Central Intelligence, who ended up becoming a TI himself, he basically explained that Christians had some type of protection against this technology due to their devotion to their faith, which makes them a lot harder to control. So I'm like, that can't just be a coincidence, can it? Like, it's just too obvious. So it was because of that opened my mind up and actually caused me to go over and start actually, turning my life around and actually giving my both my mind, body, heart, and soul over to Jesus Christ and the God Almighty, because I get the feeling that I may have been previously warned about this a while back, before my gang stalking even started. I had several encounters where it was just completely abrupt, and it immediately stopped me in my tracks. It was an old lady, and I'm telling you, it was the same old lady like 5 to 6 times. She would stop me dead in my tracks, either in mid-traffic, or just in random locations. Whether I was downtown, it happened. Whether I was uptown, it happened. In the suburbs, it happened. In the local neighborhoods, it happened. It was the same thing. Now, it was a guy the very last time, and this was right by one of the banks that I was coming from, and I just so happened to, I'm just like this, I just didn't even know what to make out of this, and now I'm looking at my situation, and I'm like, I feel like I may have been, something was warning me about what was happening. And since I started turning my life over to Jesus Christ, things have started to get better and better and better, and I've started to find more and more and more ways to counteract these demonic harassment attacks, this demonic stalking, this demonic slandering and whatnot. And I found out through this research that this stuff actually causes mind control. This V2K stuff, man, it's all related to around mind control, fungi, and all sorts of stuff. I won't go too far into this. If anybody else wants to know about that, look it up for yourself. Just look it up for yourself. But anyway, I'm getting a little bit sidetracked here, so let me start from the beginning. It was me, my mom, my brother, and my sister. We were on the metro train heading over to my grandfather's house. I can't recall what was going on before then. So many of my memories from back after that are immediately all mixed up. So you gotta forgive me on that one. But I wasn't having any of these symptoms around that time sometime until after I went over to my grandfather's place. Now, over the time I was there, things were still fine. Things were okay. But out of nowhere, I want to say maybe a month and a half, my mom just up and took off. Didn't know where she went. We kept contact with her every now and then, but that was it. My sister was still there, so was my brother, but after a couple of months, he kind of left and went on the other side, somewhere on the other side of the continent with other family or whatever. So I haven't even seen or heard from my brother since he moved out. So it was just me, my sister, and my grandfather, and eventually her boyfriend moved in. So over the time, the years just started going by, and eventually my mom shows up. She stays for a bit, but she brings me over to where she's living at, and she's living in this nice looking apartment complex, and she has this really magnificent job. And what she's doing is she's working in a huge tall building, skyscraper building, and it was for a cellular company. She was working at a desk job, and she was doing that for quite some time now. Now, here's what doesn't make sense. Now, my mom had an issue with seizures, so with the amount of money she was making at a job like that had to have been a lot of money. So she should not have had any problems with her health. She should not have been having any problems with anything. But for some reason, something ended up happening, and she lost her job, and for some reason, like, a lot of odd stuff started to happen. And I was with her during this time. And it was a lot of in and out of homeless shelters. It was a lot of her moving from state to state, to house to some of the guys she hooked up with, and I just started questioning a lot of the situations. Eventually, like, it got to another situation where I ended up staying over my grandfather's place again, and eventually she got a new apartment complex, and then I stayed in there for a bit, and it was kind of like a little bit of back and forth like that, and it just kept happening. I just didn't understand, like, it's like she would do that and then she had to move to a whole nother state. Like, it wasn't just lose a job and get another job. No, it was moving to a whole nother state. So I just couldn't make heads or tails of what was going on. And then I started noticing some very strange things were happening. And I didn't notice it until we ended up staying over at my aunt's place for the first time. And what happened was, it was me and my mom, and what happened was, at some point in time, my mom went over to the DMV, but after that, she had to go pick up her permit, but for some reason, she didn't go do it. So it was me and my aunt that was in the car, and my aunt told me to just go in there and pick it up from my mom, right? So I'm walking in there, and the people who are at the DMV started talking a lot of crap, and they just started cracking jokes about my mom, and I'm like, she should barely know these people, and she should only have known them for, like, not very long, and they just assumed that my mom was the one driving the tan SUV, which was owned by my aunt. And my mom wasn't the person in the car, so I'm like, that's very strange how they would just act like that. And I know she barely knew these people, so it's like, it came off as very, very strange. I didn't think much of it, but a little bit after that, we get out of that situation. My mom eventually gets another apartment, and she drives me over to my grandfather's place again, and it wasn't. And now during this time, I remember in the morning she had bought me this unusual looking Lego or a Connect toy, and what she did was she drove me all the way down to my grandfather's place. And I don't know why this happened, but it happened, and I had the most outrageous freaking migraine that I have ever had in my life. I don't normally have migraines, and this was the first time I've ever had one. I didn't know what was going on. I was in so much pain. I was in so much pain that I didn't even know what to do. Like, every time someone said something, it hurt. Every time someone would even touch me, it hurt. It got so bad that I literally went outside, and I ended up going outside, and, like, it just would not stop. And then around like 5 to 6 to maybe 10 minutes after that, it just ceased. I laid down for a bit, and I was just exhausted because the pain was just so intense. Now, ever since that moment in my life, I've ended up having these symptoms, and it was like some unusual. It was constant, not really constant, but like very random paralysis that I had. It would either be me laying on the couch and I'll be paralyzed. I couldn't move. I couldn't even speak. I couldn't say a word, not anything. I couldn't even call for help from my mom. I couldn't call for help from my sister, my grandfather. I couldn't say anything. This happened whenever at certain time, very random times when I was either laying down on the couch, laying down on the bed, and like it got to a point where like I had to start laying on the edge of my bed or the very edge of a couch, and like I could only have so much movement to my body, and it was just so intense. Like every part of my body was numb just from laying down, and it just didn't make any sense to me. I've had moments like that. I've also had moments to where I would like get very light. I want to either say either light or heavy-headed, and for some reason, like I would just black right out, and I would just ended up laying down wherever I was just laying, and then I'll be like that, like just passed out for like around, I want to say maybe a minute or two, no longer than that, sometimes shorter, but that's about it. So there's that, and there was, for some reason, I had this unusual weightness on my body, and I didn't know what it was. And then it wasn't until like I started going through these situations with this EMF radiation that they beam down on you that I started realizing, and I realized that this may have been happening to me all the way back since I was 13 years old. And I don't know who put me on this. I don't know what was the reason, but I suspect that my mom may have been a targeted individual way before I was a targeted individual. And that due to me being, or it was because of her, or whether I should say, it was because of their interest in me that she became targeted, and I really hope that's not the case. And I really hope that this whole situation that she wasn't a target at all. But it's just so much stuff that I have questions for, very questionable situations. There was another situation where she ended up going to a bank, and she had to beg a banker just to cash her check. I ain't never seen a situation like that. I've never seen a situation like that. And then looking back onto that, I'm like, that's like within the same. Understand this situation. My mom had to travel to the next state over just to try to cash her check from the state that she was working in. She had to cross over to another state just to cash her check from the state that she was working in. Now, I'm looking back at my situation. I was getting checks from my job, and I had a lot of people giving me the runaround. I had at least one person damage my check, but I couldn't make out who it was. They scratched out one of the, it was so bad, they scratched out one of the numbers, and I don't know whether it was the lady at the bank or the lady at the Walmart, the very last Walmart I went to. So I ended up having to call my cousin up to have him off as a witness just for me to get my check cashed. So they didn't do anything like that, but then I realized that, wait, you know what, no, that's not a story I want to get into right now. But anyway, it was just a lot of questionable behavior, you know, like a lot of questionable stuff. And a while back, she ends up hooking up with another person. We end up living in this person's apartment or condo, whatever, for a bit. There was a lot of that going on, but anyway, it gets to a point to where, it gets to a point that, how should I say this? It got to a point that, like, that
if you're wondering about that, I was going under EMF attacks at that point, so it was kind of hard to gather my thoughts.
And I just didn't understand, like, it started to seem like my mother didn't even have the option to actually go out and get a job. And at times, like, she was lucky she could, but I'm telling you, like, it was very odd because she had to go from state to state. And eventually we left that. It was in a shitty neighborhood anyway. It was in Chicago somewhere. But we eventually settled down in this house, right? Now, it was from one house to a second house, and into a third house, and then eventually to a fourth. But before the fourth house that we moved into, what happened was this was the I want to say no, actually, yeah, this was the fourth. It was the third house. It was the third house, and this was in the same state this time. So what happened was the neighbors, these Hispanic neighbors. Now I'm not saying all Hispanics are bad, but these people were Hispanic, and it was very unusual behavior. Like, it just didn't seem horrible at all. Like, what happened was the landlady warned me about or not just me, but my mother, about the neighbors, and she said that she had a lot of issues from them. Not just them, but from some other people throughout the neighborhood. And what happened was, like, I ended up meeting the two boys from that house. I tried to steer clear from them. They ended up saying hey. I said hey back, and then I left it at that. Something unusual happened, though. Like, I ended up getting chased by them at one point. And normally I would stand my ground and fight, but these kids, these two guys, they were around my size, and they had bats. I don't know what pissed them off. I don't know what it was. I ended up going behind the glass in the lounge area in the house, and they wouldn't dare touch it because they know, like, they would be in deep trouble if they did. So they didn't do that. I made sure I locked down the house until my mom got back. And eventually, like, what I did was a couple, like, I want to say like 2 months after that first incident, what ended up happening was how should I say? What ended up happening was I ended up taking out my bike, my old bike. I fixed it up. It was a Burgundy, I think that was a Luxus or whatever, Lux something, L something that they called it. I don't know what they call bikes nowadays. They got so many names and so many brands. But I ended up taking that bike out. Big mistake. But I had to get it to the garage, and what I wanted to do was give it a new coat of paint, but I didn't want to keep the same paint color. I wanted to color my bike completely white with a white base paint, and then have the stickers shown. So I got the tape, but unfortunately what I should have done, I should have gotten some, what do they call that? Sandpaper, sand the original coat off, and then put the new coat on. My mistake, because unfortunately my mom had to desperately dig through the closet trying to find the darn receipt as proof of purchase of that bike. She desperately tried to keep my bike, but I'm telling you, like, this family was so freaking corrupted that the kid's father was a freaking police officer. So, I mean, I want to say again, my symptoms to this happened way before then, so I don't think they were involved. But I think that they may have something to do with this targeting thing that was happening towards my mom. I don't know. And eventually something happens to where we move from there. We move into a completely different house, and I ended up meeting some of the guys who I used to go to school with. I didn't see these guys in like around like 3 to 2 years, and I'm like, holy shit. And it was so unusual because it wasn't just the first one. It was that, and then how should I say, like it was kind of in a pattern. Like there was a house number 1, house number 2, house number 3, which was the blue house we were living in, and house number 4, finally house number 4. Now, this is when I meet up with the other guy.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm hitting the 25-minute mark, and I had to end this vid here. I don't want to go over too many minutes here, so I'm going to go ahead and end it here, and then I'm going to start it up again on the next vid that I'm going to post.